Welcome to another episode of the Top Attorneys of North America podcast. Today, we are honored to be joined by an extraordinary advocate, strategist, and thought leader in the areas of wealth management, tax law, estate planning, and financial empowerment, Attorney Selwyn D. Whitehead. Based in Oakland, California, Selwyn has built a remarkable career rooted in not just legal excellence, but public service and community impact. A certified bankruptcy law attorney and founder of the law offices of Selwyn D. Whitehead, she helps individuals and business owners navigate the complex intersections of wealth preservation, debt restructuring, tax challenges, and very importantly, legacy planning. Her work extends beyond the courtroom as the host of Selwyn's Law, a weekly radio show educating listeners about critical legal issues, and as a pioneer in consumer advocacy and financial literacy. Selwyn, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Bless you.
The honor is ours. I appreciate you being here. And I always like to start each and every episode with what inspired you to become an attorney, because I know that you do have an interesting background. Prior to becoming an attorney, you had a successful career in communication systems engineering and operations management. What inspired the transition to become an attorney?
Well, I have to go way back to when I was a little girl. Just so you know, my dad was a professional soldier, and he wasn't there when I was born. I actually met him when I say cognizant. I was like a year and a half, and I was in this family with a bunch of women, and I had an older brother who, translated for me. But then this man who was strong and kind, and he looked just like me, only he was darker complected. And he talked to me as a person, and he drew stuff out of me because I was introverted. And so he was like my first love. It's like, and he'd tell me I could be anything, I could do anything, but I had a duty to the community, just what he did as a soldier, a professional soldier who got a battlefield commission. And he thought because I was pretty smart, even as a toddler, that I should go to law school. But I was like too introverted, and then after my folks split up, my mom would tell me that, you just too introverted, so you need to think about doing something that you could do on your own. Well, nevertheless, I did study math and science, and I excelled at that, and I wanted to be an engineer. But when I went to live with my dad at age 14, he brought up that idea of me being a lawyer again. And I said, man, I want to be an engineer. So to make a long story short, I became a lawyer through my community service and advocacy work. I would give my services for free to nonprofit organizations, and I was successful in educating the California legislature about issues concerning women and people of color and their access to finances. So much so that I got some bills passed with without being a registered lobbyist. And the then insurance commissioner and a bunch of lawyers that work for insurance companies, they charged me with, practicing being a lobbyist without a license. And I was working for a nonprofit, and they said, okay, well, do what you need to do to register, and you'll become a registered lobbyist. And that opened up opportunities for me to go back to Washington, D.C. and educate Congress about issues affecting women and people of color. So much so that I got in on the bad side of an insurance commissioner who tried to make my life miserable, and I had to hire a lawyer to um, do a defamation lawsuit. And that's when I found out that as a public person, I had limited abilities for redress, and that just prompted me. My dad was calling from the grave. You have to become a lawyer to help people help you, and for you to fulfill your duty as a advocate. So I became a lawyer at age 50.
Wow.
I've been practicing for 20 years.
Wow.
And it helped at the time. It helped me help my attorneys defend me because I could do a lot of the research myself. And it also helps me be able to stand up to bullies who want to mess with my little old lady clients or my disabled clients. And so, my dad and my grands, they reached out from the grave and says, "Now we told you you needed to be a lawyer." But though the training that I got as an engineer helps me think things through logically. So both of the areas come together in my practice.
Oh, that's beautiful. We could end the podcast there. uh, Grands and your dad are definitely looking down, smiling, and I think it's amazing that you were able to make that transition later in life, and it goes to show you that never give up on chasing your dream, or it's never too late to, you know, to start over or enter a new career path. And I want to ask, what were there early challenges that you faced entering the legal profession? How did they shape the attorney that you are today?
Well, I'm going to be frank with you. As the law is predominantly white, male,
Hmm.
privileged class of folks, cliquish, um, it was hard. But then again, my training as an engineer, because engineers go off in a room by themselves and figure shit out. Excuse my French. So I said that's what I was going to do. And there are some Native American people in my ancestry, and I found out that there was like two kinds of Native Americans: those that were very tribal and tended to go to the tribal elders for advice and counsel, which is important. But then there were also the pathfinders. Those were the ones that would go off on a trail, kind of like the Native American version of Lewis and Clark in their expedition. But you go off and you go have new adventures and you meet new people and you get new ideas. And so that has always sustained me, being able to do the research myself, and when people wouldn't help me, um, wouldn't offer me a job, I'm glad that they did, because it built up character and it built up resilience, and it made me want to seek out and find the answers for myself. Now, don't get me wrong, I have met some wonderful white male attorneys and wonderful white male judges and white female judges who have wanted to help me. But you know what it was? It was because they knew I was resilient and I would depend on myself, and they like that. So if there's a young person listening to me, you don't have to be part of a gang. You don't have to be part of a clique. You need to. This People wonder why I have this background, because it's the key doorway to the universe. It's the doorway to the um, consciousness that has us all here on this planet. We have a purpose. Number one, to help ourselves, our families, so we can help others. So that's what I believe. I believe in being a pathfinder, and if you can't find anybody to help you get the information, get it yourself.
Love it. Love it. I normally save my next question till the end of the interview, but I'm glad that you brought up what you did. So I feel compelled to ask it now. What advice would you give to women, minorities who want to build authority and credibility in, like you said, a traditionally male-dominated legal or financial space?
You have to really take it upon yourself to do the research, do the study, have quiet time, keep yourself mentally and physically strong, stay away from things that will harm your body, your psyche, and your spirit. And that includes people, unfortunately, and some of them are in your family or in your close community. We're going through such a strange time right now. One of the reasons I'm glad I'm just turned 71 is I remember back when I was a little girl and there was the civil rights movement going on television. just about every night on the news, and I saw these brave people, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., um, and their followings, and they are, it's being replicated by some of the folks in Minneapolis today. And so I tell people those people were strong. It was, an adverse situation for them, but they've got that internal fortitude somehow. And John Lewis, he was another one. And these people were impressed upon me when I was a little girl. And as a middle-aged woman, I got to meet Nelson Mandela when he came to the United States. He came to Oakland, to the Oakland Coliseum. And so I'm not telling people to have hero worship, but open your eyes and your ears and look to people that are trying to make a difference, and then emulate that, trying to make a difference in your own life, in your work. um, I am a person of faith. I believe that that is required too, but you don't have to be, but you have to believe in something that will compel you to help others. And my faith compels me to do that. So young people, get a good education, even if you have to educate yourself. Utilize artificial intelligence, the good side of it. Stay away from the bad parts of it. I don't use social media per se, but I do use artificial intelligence to help me find cases that I need. But I use the walled off version of one that's just for lawyers and doesn't have other stuff that's interfering in it. But young people, we are put here on this planet for a reason. And again, to help others. My dad, as a professional soldier, who, just think about what he had to go through. His first enlistment was with the Marines before the Marines were segregated. And in fact, he was there when President Eisenhower, and I was just born when President Eisenhower fully integrated the Army back in 1954 when I came on the scene. So you, even if you're going into an environment that's hostile, arm yourself with the knowledge that you're prepared. You know what you're doing. Even you're going to make mistakes. Forgive yourself for making mistakes, but keep moving forward. That's what I tell people. Keep moving forward. Keep your spirit alive. Help your clients, get over issues. Help your community grow and prosper. Talk the truth to those who would perpetrate evil in your community, and just don't be afraid.
Yes, a lot of pearls there. I could definitely hear the passion. I definitely love that. And let's focus a little bit more on the practice itself. I know that you are a certified bankruptcy law specialist. Tell our listeners exactly what that means and why that distinguishes you from other attorneys that simply practice bankruptcy law.
Well, the reason I'm a certified practitioner is because I could not find any of the cliquish existing bankruptcy bar that were willing to help me. And some of them were actually hostile. And so it
Mm,
goes back to the first lesson that I've talked about. If you can't get other people to help you, you have to help yourself. So a certified bankruptcy specialist has to take another bar exam. So after you get out of law school and you want to practice, you take a bar exam, and there's character examination, and then you get the license to practice law. To be a certified specialist for bankruptcy, you have to practice for at least 5 years, and then you take another bar examination to be certified by the state of California, in my instance, to be a certified practitioner. So that means that I've taken, I don't know, oodles of courses. I went through another examination before the bar, and I had to have people recommend me. A couple of judges, those white male judges that, saw that I was really good at it, and they believed in me, so they signed off on it. people I had come up against on the other side. Sometimes I'd beat their butts and sometimes they'd beat mine, but they knew that I was in it for my client. They signed off on it. And so it means that you're thoroughly vetted and that you bring to the table the additional knowledge that you need to be a certified practitioner. And you have to renew that license, that additional certification every 5 years. And I'm going through that process right now. So, in fact, the State Bar of California only recommends individuals who have re- received that designation in any of the areas of law that they practice. And unfortunately, I think I'm the only African American female with that designation in California. I, you know, I it's hard, but it's worth it. I feel comfortable telling my clients that I don't know something, but I will find it out for them. And that's what I think being a certified practitioner is. Now, I don't know everything off the top of my head. I couldn't remember everything, but that sounds like something that I could help you with. I'm going to do some research, and then before you pay me a dime, I'm going to tell you what my opinion is on it. So.
Yes, ma'am. And in addition to bankruptcy, you also focus on wealth management, estate planning. And as I alluded to in our pre-interview, I am excited that you're on today because the importance of estate planning is paramount. Statistically, boomers hold a large share of U.S. household wealth. So making strategic planning is essential to prevent unnecessary taxes and family conflict, which unfortunately happens all too often. Please explain to our listeners the importance of thoughtful estate planning in today's climate.
It is so crucial, especially for communities that historically did not have wealth. Um, if you don't make your own plans for your going to the next iteration, a judge will. And that judge will more than likely be a white male judge with his own ideas about planning. And unfortunately for individuals of color, like we're the my generation, we're the first generation that could buy a house, and that's the one asset that really allows you to accumulate wealth, especially places like California and New York. And you put off estate planning until the very end when you're not competent, or you don't do it at all, and your family members squabble, and again, this stranger, this judge, is going to make a decision for you. You're right. The baby boomer generation, we're all getting up there in age. We have this wealth. We need to have a will, durable power of attorney for financial matters, durable power of attorney for medical matters. If we and we should record these documents. It should be a living trust that will become a permanent trust once you leave the mortal coil, as it were. And I again suggest that people record it so there's no question about it. For example, if you don't want someone who would normally be, one would think would be an heir to your estate, and for whatever reason you don't want them to be included as part of your legacy, you need to say that. And you need to say that in front of, witnesses. And then that way, there's no question about it. And then again, if you do certain things, there's tax consequences, pro and con. In fact, I had this one judge looking at me kind of crazy because I said, people don't realize how close it is a bankruptcy estate is to a probate estate. In one estate, you're dead. In the other estate, you're dead financially. And the goal of a bankruptcy attorney or a probate attorney is to revive those assets in bankruptcy so you can reorganize and get them back for yourself. And if you've already left these mortal coils, to have it go to the individuals or entities that you decide that you want while you're alive. And how do we know that? You have these estate planning documents that are signed off by you, witnessed and notarized, and so there's no question about it. And even with that, sometimes people who are fake children, or I call them cockroaches coming out of the walls, they're going to try to wear you down to get the people you leave behind to do something else. But I got to tell you, if you have the proper documents and you're going before a probate judge, he has no choice but to have your uh, the desired recipients of your legacy get what you decide, because it's up to you, not up to them. And how do you make sure it's up to you? You take care of these documents while you're alive and cognitive and able to make your own decisions.
Yes, ma'am. And that's the problem, I think, is that many people assume that estate planning is only for the ultra wealthy.
Well,
How do you respond to that misconception?
Well, again, if you have a house, if you have some kind of savings plan, employer based or self-employer based, and it might just be, 40, $50,000 in that plan, or equity might be, 250 to 300. I think the average equity uh, across the United States, where the average value of a house is around 450, and say you bought that house and you own it free and clear, um, that's something that'll
Hmm.
help your grandchild go to college and start a business. That'll help your son, carry on the business that you started. That'll, help your daughter not have to marry somebody that she doesn't want to because she can't take care of herself. My dad, he liked my former spouse, but he loved me. And he told me it was his duty to make sure that I could take care of myself if I got married or if I didn't. And so, our girls, we, especially our black and brown girls, we need to make sure that they are able to get a good start in life with a good education and some finances to get them started. And so if grandma has some equity in her house, and grandma loves granddaughter, um, you know, you grandma needs to make sure that what she wants goes to granddaughter, so granddaughter doesn't have to marry somebody that she doesn't want to.
Too funny, very funny. Uh, I can hear the advocate in you every time that you answer a question, and I applaud that. So, moving forward, let's talk about your radio show, Selwyn's Law. Why did you start this show, and what role does public legal education play in your mission?
Well, I was invited by the owner of the radio station. It's a Christian based radio station, but they have public affairs on Saturdays. And there was a real estate show, and then there was my show on the law, and they had a medical show. That station got bought out by the station I'm with now. That's still faith based, and now they have me on with other faith leaders. But so it's not that having finances is a religion, and certainly it's not. But in order to be able to do the things that you want to do in your faith, you do need to make a living. And so you need to know about finances. And so on my show, I've been doing it since 2012. We talk about tax law, and I examine people running for office every election season and talk about the bills that they have passed or blocked that would enhance the community's access to capital and credit. I talk about bankruptcy law, and I talk about federalism. I talk about the need for civic education, because people think civics is some abstract thing, but it's about citizenryship, and how we have a duty to get involved in our political life, to make sure that the people we send back to Washington care about our issues, whether they're interested in faith or not, because people of faith need to be involved in the process. And it's, to me, it's about fairness. So I like I said, I've been doing this show for so long. Right now we're talking about the top issues for 2026, and insurance is a big issue. Health insurance, access to the Affordable Care Act, and what people are doing or not doing. I've done a show about what public employees who got laid off or furloughed during the last governmental shutdown, where they could go to get financial assistance, where there were grants for them to sustain themselves while the government was shut down, and it might shut down again. So I just believe that to those who've been given a lot, you have a duty to share that information and knowledge. I'm not wealthy. I make a reasonable living. I'm not ostentatious. I do like clothes, but whatever. I'll buy them used if I need to. But so I've been given this. I've been blessed with having access to knowledge, and it's my duty to share it. And so few people are willing to share information about finances, which are important to all of us. And so I feel that void. So I don't feel bad of being crunched in between ministerial shows, because those guys are talking about what they know, and I'm talking about what I know.
Excellent. I want to go back to something you said earlier. If grandma wants to give granddaughter, the equity in the house, or make sure that she's taken care of, how do you help families navigate the emotional and legal complexity that often comes with intergenerational wealth transfer?
Well, first off, I make sure that everybody involved understands I represent the individual who needs the estate plan. Even if children, listen to me on the radio and they tell, mom or grandma or grandpa about me, I represent that client. And my duty is to make sure that if we're going to prepare legal documents, that my client is cognitive and is capable of making sound financial decisions. And say granddaughter was the one that introduced me to grandma, I'll cordon her off, and then I'll spend time just with grandma. What do you want to do? And grandma says, well, I care about Sweetie Pie, because she's always there for my birthday, and I want to make sure that she can go to college, and she wants to do X, Y, and Z, and I want to help her get started in business. I want to know what grandma wants to know, because wants to do with her resources. And so people have to realize that. I mean, I have some instances where uh, you don't want it to be that the legacy is designed by grandma who's under duress, because maybe her son or daughter is applying pressure. Maybe grandma is not mobile, and maybe she depends on her children to take her to the doctor or feed her or whatever. I want to get in the room with grandma alone, not just once, not just twice, but I want to find out what it is that grandma wants to do, and then I'll help her do it. I'll help her to the best of my ability do it. And I also sometimes have to get into fights after grandma has passed on, and like I said, cousin Joe or former boyfriend, or wants to come in and take over, and so it's like so again, grandma gets to decide what she's going to do with her wealth, even if it's like I said, $50,000, 25,000, whatever it is, and the equity in her house, or the equity in her business, or her car, her shed, what's in the shed. That's grandma's decision, and my job is to help make sure she can articulate it, and then that it'll withstand muster if it has to go in front of a judge because somebody wants to have a probate litigation.
A lot of emotion,
A
especially
lot of
when,
emotion, a lot
yeah.
of emotion. But again, so if I can help draft the documents, because I know what grandma wants, but say I'm brought in by, after grandma passes and I'm brought in by one of the people, the legacies, then I have to examine the documents and make sure that the documents are accurate, and then I represent the individual or family who's been attacked by outside forces. So it's kind of both sides of the coin, as it were.
I do have the opportunity to speak to many attorneys that handle estate planning, and they all tell me that they most of the time these people they come to me too late. So I want to ask, what advice do you have for younger generations who may not yet have begun serious estate or tax planning?
The sooner you do it, the better. Um, for example, I think parents have a duty, uh, when they give birth and bring a child into the world, to, as part of that child's training and setting aside funds for their education, they need to ha- develop estate planning, because the child might be in a terrible automobile accident, and you need a special plan to help make sure that the child is able to fund their medical expenses. And so estate planning really should be something that young marrieds think about. You just get married, and my former spouse was a soldier, and go off to, not necessarily war, but go off to duty in some strange places. So you needed to have, I needed to have a power of attorney and his will, and estate planning, and the same for me. I could, you know, be run over by a train, or get knocked upside the head and lose my mind. So it's something that you need to do as part of your family planning, your strategic planning. How many kids are you going to have when they come on board? You're going to, to figure out how you're going to leave stuff to them when they're young. Just think about it. If you and your spouse got killed, and you have 5 kids, and you don't have any relatives, or even if you do, how do they know what it is that you want for your children? And if you don't have any relatives, just think, the state's going to take over rearing them. But even if that were the case, if you had a plan for how you wanted to use your resources to guarantee their education, and if they got adopted, it would be in a trust, such that the funds couldn't be accessed except for in emergencies or for their education, and the remainder of it would be for them when they grow up. So estate planning isn't just for the old, although we have this huge cohort of baby boomers coming on board who don't have an estate plan. It's really something that you need to think about all along as part of your relationship with your spouse, or your partner, or your family unit, however it's conceived and configured.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. The younger generation, myself included, when you talk about your own mortality, and I don't think I'm going to die, but like you said, you could step off the curb, get hit by a bus, and then what? Now, what happens to my 3 kids? How are they set up? Where's the house going to go? Where's so much to worry about? And you're right. You're never too young to think about that. And
And have
I
an
would,
insurance policy, and
yeah,
spouses need to have an insurance policy. That way, if you were to pass, and in the olden days, a woman had to remarry somebody that she barely knew if she had kids and needed to raise. So if you have an insurance policy for $1 million, that'll help her. And the same, if she was to pass, because you'd have to take care of the kids on your own, you need to have insurance. That's why I started my show this year talking about insurance, health insurance, but next we're going to talk about life insurance. That's real important to have, and that's all part of a forward thinking estate plan, a life plan, okay?
Yes, ma'am. And I'd like to ask, looking back on your career, uh, you've run the gamut, engineer to advocate to attorney, media host. What moments stand out as your proudest?
As my proudest. I'd say getting my license to practice law. Um, my name is, Selwyn Denise Whitehead, but my degrees say Selwyn Denise Jackson Whitehead for my dad. Um, Helping uh, a severely handicapped individual um, get a Chapter 13 plan confirmed by a court so this person could keep his house. That was a blessing. Before I became a bankruptcy attorney, I had worked in the insurance industry, as I shared with you, and my first job was with an insurance company. But I went to the grocery store one day and I ran into a dear friend, and she looked horrible. I mean, I'm not talking about aesthetics, but she just looked so sad. And then she blew it off. This person was really gregarious. And then I ran into her at the shopping center, and she looked even worse. And I says, "What is wrong with you, woman?" And she said, "Well, I have to go to the bankruptcy court in 2 weeks, and they're going to foreclose on my house, and I've been doing my own bankruptcy." And I says, "Woman, why didn't you call me?" She says, "Well, Sal, I know you're a lawyer, but you do insurance law." I I went back to my boss at the insurance company and I told her I needed to take the next week off, and I ordered these books from this nonprofit organization on bankruptcy, and I stayed up like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days in a row, and I read all those books, and I prepared the documents, and I substituted in for her the day of the hearing, and I was able to save her house. Oh man, the smile on her face, and oh God, that made me happy. That made me happy. And so helping, you know, disabled and seniors, that seems to be the area that I focus on. It gives me the most joy, and I'm just hoping that the work that I do here on Earth will reach out to the stars, and the persons or person in charge will have that down. Well, we might let someone in. We'll at least let her in on a trial basis because she did that. But those are the beginning of my bankruptcy career, and the most recent confirmation in my bankruptcy career are some of the most proudest. Now, I designed, when I was an engineer, I designed communication systems for aircraft carriers and submarines, and that was way, way cool. But that kind of led to my divorce because not that I was doing anything with the captain of the boat. It's just that my former spouse said, you always do what you want to do and you can do anything, and that's having a negative impact on my ego. And I thought back to what my dad said. Girl, I like him, but you need to be able to take care of yourself. So as an engineer, designing systems that our government used to protect us, and in my legal career, helping people who otherwise had given up. That is the most rewarding.
Excellent. Uh, I think the work that you're doing is great, and there's no doubt in my mind that there's a special place for you
I hope
upstairs.
so.
No, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I'm glad you brought up what you did, because I know you put a lot of hours in. You said it yourself. Your work is extremely important. I'm sure wherever you go, whether it's the supermarket, a party, or some sort of gathering, someone has a question for you. What are you doing for you now in your personal time? How do you help balance the work home relationship?
That is a excellent question, and it's something that has sustained me. I take time to meditate, and I don't work the weekends anymore now. I I take time to do things that are fun on Saturdays, and I take time on Sundays to refresh my relationship with the universe. And so um, that sustains me. And and that is some meditation. I try to eat healthy. In fact, I do. I don't indulge in alcohol or drugs. Um, I'll take a prescription if I have to, but I try to lead a holistic life, and so far so good. I'm in the fourth quarter, so I need to be able to sustain myself, not like that football game that happened. Well, maybe so. I mean, it was a defensive game. I'll put it that
Yep.
way. But yeah, to even young lawyers, I tell them you need to take some time for yourself and your family, and just to get away from it because although I find joy in the practice now, there's downsides to it. You get into disputes with opposing counsel. Yeah, some judges, I wonder how they ever got on the bench. Not a whole lot, but a few. So you have to like take that in stride and just calm down and take each issue as it comes and try to do your best you can to overcome it.
Yeah, well, I think personally you look great. You have lots of energy. Um, what's next for you professionally? Your goals, aspirations. I know you're not just going to, you know, put it all aside and say, "No, that's it, I'm done." You're a mover, you're a shaker. You're writing, increased community impact. Where do you see yourself over the next few years?
Well, I'm straddling the law and journalism, a special kind of journalism, commentary, critiques, perspectives. Um, I am a guest columnist for a couple of really great legal publications, the Daily Journal out here in California. It has several editions, Bay Area and one down in Los Angeles. So I write for them at least once a month, and then a couple international legal journals. One coming out of United Kingdom, Corporate Live Wire. It's a platform for businesses, but they have a section on reconstruction and bankruptcy. You know, I bankruptcy, people think that must be really depressing. I think bankruptcy is renewing. It's redemption. It revitalizes. It can save businesses. It can keep a tax base alive. It can make it such that after an individual or a small business comes out of bankruptcy solvent, the owners will have something to leave to their children via an estate plan. So um, I like educating people about bankruptcy. I like writing. So I think maybe in my a judge asked me, if I wanted to be a judge. Well, if I was a judge, I'd have to be quiet. So I was telling him, I think journalism is my calling, my next calling. It's not that I'm going to stop practicing, but I like doing the research. I like that it reaches a wide audience, and I get clients that way through my radio show, and I just want to be happy and make a contribution in my fourth quarter.
Excellent. Are you mentoring individuals now? Any younger attorneys, clients, community? Like what legacy do you hope to leave?
Again, as a pathfinder, I go out on to the new trails or make new trails, but mentoring and convincing young people that the law is something that they should consider, even if they're persons of color and women. And it's really hard right now for just about anybody because our economy is so bizarre.
Mhm.
Like, what is it like? 1% of the populace controls about 60% of the wealth. So most people anymore are having difficulty sending their children to college. And you do need a college education to become a lawyer. But I'm thinking that with the implementation and the wider use of generative AI that's controlled by moral, ethical human beings, that's one way to teach the next generation of lawyers about the law and how it can help. So that's, again, educating the populace about the law and educating the next generation about the law and how it can be used to build stronger communities and build stronger relationships. And the idea that I'm international, that is to say, I write for international publications, hopefully, and we can bring the world to closer together. I know some people in charge don't believe in globalism, but we have to be global in thinking. We have to work on pollution, climate change. I worked for NATO in my younger life. I believe in institutions like NATO and also the United Nations. That's what's going to keep us from destroying this wonderful planet that God gave us to steward. So
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
what I'm going to do with the rest of my life.
I definitely agree. For anyone in the Bay Area, the Sacramento area, which I know you service, that may have further questions or would like to retain your services, what is the best way to reach you? What's your best phone number, website, email?
My best phone number is area code 510-633-1276. And I have a service, so they'll catch the call and they'll track me down if they can. Otherwise, they'll send me an email. I'll get back to you. My website is selwynwhitehead.com, and there's a way for you to get in touch with me there. And I have another email, selwynwhitehead@yahoo.com. That one gets kind of cramped. So, but I will be on the lookout. So I would say the best way to reach me is to call me at 510-633-1276, because my service, if I'm not available, they will take down all the information and shoot me an email, and I will get back in touch with you.
Excellent. I'll be sure to highlight your number and website and email for you. And Selwyn, I have to really thank you. You truly are a trailblazer. I love the fact that you're able to share your insights, wisdom, very, very powerful perspectives on law, wealth, and legacy. From educating the public about their rights to guiding families through complex financial and legal issues, your work reminds us how essential thoughtful legal planning is in every stage of life. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Sal. You take care.
Thank you for listening to the Top Attorneys podcast. The Top Attorneys celebrates the achievements of leading attorneys across the nation. To be featured, send a message or visit www.topattorneys.us.